to go. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to my talk. So my name is Mike Rigby, and it is very, very nice to meet you all. Hello to everybody on the live stream as well. So I have the pleasure of working for a company called RGA. And so this is our New York office. There's about 800 of us in that office, about 2,000 of us around the world, across 20 offices, 600 designers and 350 engineers. And I'm a vice president and executive creative director based in our New York office. And I'm a designer, basically. And this was the first thing I ever designed at RGA on my first day when I needed a new screensaver. So it's my little Rigby logo. It's probably the best thing I ever designed at RGA, to be honest. So it's been downhill since day one. Hopefully you've seen the RGA logo. That will make no sense. I really, really love design. I love identity. I'll talk a little bit about that. So what do we do? So RGA, probably our most famous client is Nike. I've been working with Nike for 18 years. We did things like Nike Field Band, Nike Plus. We also worked with Google. We helped to build the Beats brand into what it is today. So we built Beats Music, which obviously became Apple Music. I'm in LA, so I have to show LeBron. And so we've done a lot of campaign work with LeBron. And this is a humpback whale that we modeled in our content studio. And then we had this beautiful whale swim around all of the billboards in Times Square, this kind of like serene scene for about 3 hours to help launch Samsung's latest device. So we literally do these massive projects for massive brands, but we also work with some of the smallest companies around as well. So over the last 4 years, we've helped to launch 100 startups through our Accelerator and Ventures program. And this is awesome because you get to work directly with the founders and really help them in any way that we can. So, the first thing I wanted to say and tell you is that I really love my job. I don't just mean working at RGA, I mean being a designer, being a creative person. And it's kind of like an intrinsic part of me. It's a part of my being. And I'm sure a lot of you guys feel the same way as well. It's not just a job. It's a way of seeing things and doing things, and even a way of life. So we have optimists, pessimists, and designers. So optimists see the glass half full, pessimists see it half empty, and we, creative people, designers, see the wrong shaped glass. And that's awesome, because you can apply this lens to any problem anywhere in the world. And I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm really excited about this moment that we're in right now, because it isn't like any other moment that we've ever seen. And you can see how technology is reshaping the world around us. And this kind of happenstance, the internet has essentially blown the canvas for creativity wide open. And so we're seeing this resurgence in design, what it is, what it can do. And for that reason, I don't think there's been a more exciting time to be a designer, quite honestly. This is how the Adobe conference was kicked off, right? We're in a golden age for creativity, and I couldn't agree more, because we're at the center of all of this. We're the ones that have to make sense of it. Who are those software designers designing it for? They're designing it for us, right? We're the ones that have to make sense of it, make it human, make it valuable, make it interesting, make it beautiful. That's our job. That's pretty cool. And we know that there are a lot of kind of problems out there in the world, so there's never been a more important time to be a designer anyway. And one of my favorite designers, the legendary Bruce Mau, this is one of my favorite quotes. Now that we can do anything, now that we can make anything, what will we do with that opportunity? What will we do as creative people with this opportunity that's in front of us? And it's an exciting question. So today I'm going to talk about design and how design's changed, my own design journey and how I started as a graphic designer, then a brand designer, then more multidisciplinary designer, and how my practice has changed along the way. I want to talk about technology and how technology can be an incredible tool for us and for you to amplify your work and amplify your creative impact on the world. And I'm going to talk about my area of expertise, which is branding. So I think what's interesting about this moment right now is that what we call these connected brands are really at the center of this revolution. So these are the world's most valuable brands. So this was launched 2 weeks ago, Interbrand Study. You'll recognize all of them, of course. Incidentally, Amazon are by far the quickest climber. They grew 54% this year, so they're the third biggest brand in the world right now. And it's really interesting just to stop and think for a second how much influence these brands have on our lives. It's more than most governments. It is actually quite staggering when you stop and think about it, for better or for worse. These can contribute so much to society and to the world around us. It's also interesting to think that out of these top, at least half, if not more, are actually born from technology. That's interesting. And the ones that aren't born from technology are very busy reinventing themselves through technology. So we're fortunate at RGA to work with a number of these, around 7 of these big brands. And one in particular that I want to talk about today is Nike. And so what is it about Nike that's so good? How have they managed to stay relevant for so long? How do they keep reinventing themselves while staying Nike? So I'm going to use this as kind of an anchor client. I'm going to talk about some of the things that they do. This is my talk, Building Connected Brands to Transform Businesses and Move Culture. So I'm going to show you some work, but really, I don't just want this to be about what we do, but like how we do it. So it is a bit of a how-to. We're going to break down some of the steps around how we build connected brands. I'm going to share our playbook, some examples, and then, if we get a chance, we're going to run a little exercise. I want to get you to do a mini brief to name a new technology that's going to set to revolutionize small businesses. And I'll talk you through how do we create a name. One of the most underrated, one of the most difficult things to do in branding is to create a name. And so I'm going to talk you through how we do it, and then you can spend 5-10 minutes coming up with names yourself, and then I'll run around and we can present a few of them. Has anyone ever named anything before? Yes. Awesome. Okay. And then we'll just do a wrap-up at the end. All right, so I fell in love with design at university. Before I got to university, I was studying design formally, typography, color, shape, all those things, layout. When I got to university, a light went off when I understood for the first time that design is an incredible tool for solving problems. I didn't know design could be political. I didn't know there were ideas in design. Embarrassingly, I didn't really know anything about design, to be honest. And I studied in the cold and climby kind of north of England at Preston. And I was exposed to, of course, the great masters of graphic design, this idea of communication, not decoration, idea-driven design. I was exposed to design thinking. I read this manifesto, First Things First, you all know it, written in the 60s by Ken Garland, and then updated by the luminaries of our day. And it was asking some pretty tough questions. As a design student, is design really a tool of consumerism? Are we here just to shift more cat food and toothpaste? Or can I do other things as well? And of course, this was updated and signed by the luminaries of our day and published by all of the design press. So this is when I was a student about to graduate. And all of these design magazines published this manifesto at the same time. And I was like, wow, this is an industry I really am quite proud to enter. And I'm still proud of our industry. First projects I worked on, this was the first, I think, poster I ever designed for the Museum of Emotions in London. And here I'm really just trying to apply all the things I've been taught at university about reduction, about the economy of the idea, simplicity first, communication, not decoration. I designed all kinds of posters and books and invites and those kinds of things. But what I really loved was identity. I still love identity. It's just my favorite thing. This was the first logo I ever designed. It's a bit dated. But this was like an art lounge, a coffee shop where you could actually go and meet people and learn about art. So it's a very simple idea of community and art coming together. This is an environmental housing project called Leaf Street. And so this was designed by a really good friend of mine. We were juniors together in the same team called Oliver Maltby. Beautiful idea. And this kind of symbolizes the type of work we were doing. This is another one. It might not translate that well, but in the United Kingdom, locksmiths are called key cutters. So this was a very simple idea around cutting keys. And another one, this was a marketing company called 3 Core Values, 3CV combined together. So this was awesome. We were doing really cool work. It was about reduction and minimalism. These all won awards, so we were actually quite pleased with ourselves, about entering the industry. But what happened was actually really depressing was all of these businesses completely failed within about 12 months. They'd all gone under. So, Art Lounge, it wasn't viable in that area. Leaf Street didn't get the funding they needed. And 3 Core Values broke apart because they couldn't agree on the direction of the company, ironically. True story. And so I think what struck me here was that I don't want to be a designer that's applying a beautiful veneer on a flawed business. And I started to get really interested in how can I help these businesses succeed? How can I get under the hood and start earlier so that we're not only creating beautiful brands, but actually helping to design more sustainable businesses and really helping our clients to succeed. That's what really attracted me to branding in the first place. It took me, I think, 9 years, 10 years in my career before I felt like I did anything really of note. So any young people in the audience, be patient, and your chance might come. This is a big branding project that I worked on in Australia, Rebranding Alzheimer's. And it's just one of those projects where everything just clicked into place for the first time for me. I think I understood the power of branding for the first time. So let me just explain. So this is Alzheimer's Australia's old logo, and they approached us and asked us to create a new one. And of course, they did need a new logo, because you can see it's a little bit corporate. and it kind of sounds like it's given up already, like there's an air of resignation, and it's like living with dementia. Oh, I don't know what we're going to do. And there's no energy here, there's no idea here, and the rest of the brand was very generic. But actually, as you go through your design research project and you start to understand what are the issues, underlying problem, and we found out that by 2030, Alzheimer's will kill more people than cancer. It's already the third biggest killer in the world. And in Australia, it's not recognized as a chronic disease by the Australian government, which is basically criminal. This should not be allowed. And there's a stigma associated. It's called the silent epidemic. No one talks about it. And it affects people as young as 30. And it's getting worse. And there's no cure. So this is obviously a very big problem that we needed to tackle. And to do that, we really needed to redesign the brand and the business from the inside out. And we started with the culture of the place. They were lovely people, absolutely lovely. And they were very driven. But there was no kind of cohesion on the inside of the organization. There was no point of view. And it was very disparate. So what we set about doing was essentially redesigning the business to allow them to basically create a social movement. Not just a change of logo, but a social movement. So let me just explain some of the things we did. So these are some of the stakeholders that we kind of highlighted. There was 40 or 50 of them, and there was a federated model as a business. So every state was talking to every one of these people in their own way through their own marketing. It's absolute craziness. And so what we did was we created what we call 5 strategic clusters. So, very simple, but shakers, influencers, those touched by dementia, those vulnerable to dementia, and of course, donors. And just this very simple focusing on the inside. It's just design, right? We're designing a better business from the inside out. They also thought they stood for 35 things. And so we gave them 3 very simple things to stand for: advocacy, research, and services. And we centralized the organization. So it's one Alzheimer's Australia with one goal, which is obviously to rid the world of Alzheimer's. So once we'd done that, then we could actually design the identity. And the idea here was to put a fighting spirit at the heart of the brand. And if no one's talking about it, let's get a conversation going. So Alzheimer's Australia remains fixed, and then we build a conversation around it. So understand Alzheimer's, educate Australia. Fight Alzheimer's, protect Australia. Tackle Alzheimer's for Australia. And those clusters that we mentioned a moment ago, now we can talk to them in a way that's appropriate for them. So it's a completely verbal brand. Typography, just a few colors. Typeface costs $30. It's very efficient, very simple. Every time you see it, it says something different. And it can just be incredibly single-minded, sometimes just a single word. And the problem we had was we need to tell people some very bad news, but we also want to be encouraging and say we can do something about it. So there's this duality in the logo and the voice and how we communicate. So for instance, Alzheimer's disease causes difficulties with speech, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. Alzheimer's disease causes problems with memory, but that doesn't mean we should forget about it. And Alzheimer's disease is incurable, but that doesn't mean we can't find a cure. So it's this positive, negative duality running through everything that we designed. And the real clever thing that we did, and this is why it was a bit of an epiphany for me, was we built a social mechanic into the brand. So we knew this would only happen if it became a grassroots, bottom-up brand, as opposed to this being this top-down brand. And this is the first time I designed a brand like this, and it really worked. So this was kind of the mechanic. So you could really easily put your name into it. It's not rocket science, but it works. Ben is fighting Alzheimer's for Australia. And people started writing their own, contributing their own. And when we launched the brand, we decided to organize a protest rally and actually take the fight to Government House. So we marched on Canberra, 1,000 people march. And it was an amazing day. And don't forget, this was a really passive culture. And suddenly they were marching on Parliament House. And to me, that just shows the incredible power of branding. It's just to get people aligned on the inside. And great brands really do start on the inside. And it just became this kind of like unstoppable wave that started inside their organization that kind of flooded out into the world. And, the Australian government actually changed the law as a result of this work. They made dementia a national health priority and, dedicated millions of dollars, $350 million in funding to this. And it just shows you what branding can do, doesn't it? It's kind of incredible moment, incredible timing. And it's not enough, but it's a start. And to me, that just showed me, wow, this is really what we can do and what design can do. I think another kind of epiphany at this is that, people often say a brand is a lot like a person, and that is backed by neuroscience. The way that we look at logos and understand and experience brands, it's the same as looking at a family member or a loved one oftentimes. And so if a brand is a lot like a person, then I think that branding is actually finding the very best in that person and bringing it to the surface. And that's what's so satisfying about it. That's why it's so important. So bringing that to the surface. So, like I say, it took me 10 years to really find this project, to do something that I felt valuable. And this is about 8 years ago, 7 years ago now. Things have changed a hell of a lot. So I want to talk about kind of RGA and how we think and how my practice has changed. And first of all, I think just go back a little bit and just explain RGA. It's a very different company. So it was started in 1977 by Richard and Robert Greenberg. So that's Bob, rocking the Lacoste back in the 70s. And they started as a motion graphics company. And so what was amazing was they had to really invent a lot of their own software, did a lot of in-camera innovations, and there was this intersection between design and technology. Here's some of their work, you'll recognize it. Some really iconic pieces of motion graphics. Stranger Things references heavily RGA's early work. And it's interesting because it is this intersection between design and technology. And RGA has changed many times, but that is ever present. That's still at the core of everything we do. Another reference for RGA is what the Medici family, of course you all know the Medici effect, 1400s, so a very wealthy family, and they became patrons and sponsors of the arts. And what they did was they brought together artists of all types of disciplines and crafts, poetry, architecture, painting, sculpture, and they put them together in Florence, and they ignited the Renaissance, one of the most creatively, innovatively fertile periods in human history. So again, it's this intersection, the Medici effect, of course, made popular, one of the most popular business books out there, Medici Effect. 1919, another reference, the Bauhaus. So the idea of intersectionality again, the circular table. Everyone has a seat, so you put the problem in the middle, and we solve it together. Intersection, designing at the intersection. So these things are the kind of the cornerstones of RGA's culture and how we think. This was our old office, so you can see it's one of the few Bauhaus buildings, unfortunately gone now. Bob sold it to a hotel company, and they knocked it down. So today we've moved into a brand new office. It's huge, it's connected. You can still see the Bauhaus reference. And of course, design and technology is key to everything we do, but it's all these other things as well that we do now. And back to what I was saying earlier, the tools at our disposal now are incredible. The canvas for creativity is so wide, and all of these things we can call to bear as we work. So, of course, all of that has affected how we think about what we call connected brands. So if we're in a moment where everything's changed, I think it's interesting to look back at how we used to build brands. So basically, there were 3 ways to reach an audience through media channels, right? So you had like reading, listening, and watching. And in this world, narrative and storytelling was absolutely key. So a business has a message, they go to an agency, they wrap it up in a metaphor, turn it into an ad, and you push it down into culture from the top down. But of course, the world has changed forever. And so the way that we design brands needs to change too. So we think about technology, behaviors, and habits. So these are very different from media habits that bottom up, for instance. So it's everything from liking to swiping to sharing to pinning. All these things we do, right? So these are bottom up in nature. These systematic elements are bottom up. So the power dynamics between people and brands has changed forever. And it's not that one or the other is more important. It's that both are important. So the story, what is our role in the world? Why does that matter? The system, what are the products and services and experiences that we create that enhance people's lives in some way and connect back to the story? And so the point is, if you're just doing one or the other, then you don't connect. And that's where trust breaks down. You get this dissonance. So if a brand is saying one thing and doing another, that just does not work. So this is what we call the connected brands framework, stories and systems, what we say, what we do, what we believe, how we behave. And so we've used this framework very simply. I'll just dig into it a little bit more. So connected brands are built on this new set of rules and play a much deeper role in people's lives. Let's talk about Nike again for a second, our longest serving client. So we call this the Nike playbook. It doesn't work for every brand, but I think there's some things that you can take to it when you work with your own clients. So 6 things. First of all, surprise, surprise, center around an inspiring active purpose. So Nike's brand, famously, is to provide inspiration and innovation for every athlete in the world. And asterisk, if you have a body, you're an athlete. So it's very kind of aspirational, but also accessible. Number 2, connect everything in an ecosystem. So we designed Nike Fuel, Nike Plus. And what's really interesting about this is that it completely changed the relationship that you have with Nike. So the more you use Nike, the better it gets. And all these things are connected together. Of course, now they have data, so they can use that to build a community of members. And so Nike talks about membership You really see that in the recent LA store. I'm sure, has anyone been? It's really cool. It's like a membership club. And so you can see in all of the language here, welcome Nike Plus members. We got you all kinds of different services that are all connected back to the Nike Plus platform. What's really awesome is, because you have this data, now we understand how people use our products. So when we designed the Nike Apple Watch, we knew that most people actually run on a Sunday. And so we were able to create a really simple use case called Just Do It Sundays around why you might buy a Nike Apple Watch. So are we running today? Sunday, fun day, Sunday, run day. So we co-opted this little thing in culture, but it's what people were really doing. So it's, there's a truth to it. There you go. Create value through innovative products and services. So this is the next generation of Nike ID that we created. It's a VR experience that you can do in store. You put the headset on, you drag the shoe around, you throw the paint on, you choose the canvas, and then you go and center it to get made. And we create all kinds of products and services for Nike. And last but certainly not least, connect authentically to a culture where your audience lives. This is no doubt where most people mess up their brands. It's the hardest part for most brands. They end up like dad at the disco, trying to be too cool or whatever. And so this is one of the latest projects that we created for Nike. This was to celebrate the 30th anniversary of MJ's iconic dunk from the free throw line. And what's interesting about the younger generation is they know the Jordan brand, but they don't know Jordan. They don't know Jordan the man, the athlete. And so how do you actually give them a sense of his incredible athleticism? So this is what we did. We created a VR experience, an AR experience. So we created this sticker where MJ is literally floating in the air at the apex of his dunk. So you can hold it up and you can see him there at the height of this kind of superhuman feat of athleticism. And the cool thing is you can buy these limited edition Tinker Hatfield sneakers directly from the app for the first time. So this was powered by Shopify, delivered through Snapchat. And these were sold out in 23 minutes. And the cool thing about it was they were delivered in 2 hours. So we used a dark store, which is one of our ventures that uses disused bricks and mortar stores to store infrastructure, to create a distribution network. And so basically you buy it from Snapchat at the NBA All-Star game, and they're waiting for you at your hotel when you get home. It's incredible. And this is a great piece of work led by our experience transformation team. Ben Williams, Gabe Chung, two of the best in the business, the best at RGN. They've won every award going. And there's the logo. So Air Jordan, tilt the eye, augmented reality, AR Jordan, very simple. You might just be able to see the free throw line is printed on the sole of the shoe as well, where he took off. It's awesome. Tinker Hatfield. Okay, so those are the things that Nike do. So Connecting Brands Playbook. You follow me at Mike Rigby, and I'm going to write this up as a blog post because I know it's a lot of information. So just hit me up on Twitter or Instagram, and I will put this in a blog post. All right, so I just wanted to say one more thing, is that narrative is still really important. And so we all saw this. This is one of the best ads I've seen. It's so long. Wieden and Kennedy is awesome. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing anything. How powerful was this? And it's a really great example of how just copy and image can still be so powerful and so important. But it isn't everything Nike do anymore. It is both of those things. So it is just do it. Inspire me. But it's also tools that help me do it. Inspiration, innovation, belief, and behavior. And that's what makes Nike work, the connected brands, story, and system. Make sense? Awesome. Okay, so how do we design? What does this mean for us as we start to execute and we get into identity? And I think one of the interesting things is we've had to really rethink the building blocks of identity to make a brand connected today. So let me explain. The way that we think about it, at least, is in two ways, signifiers and behaviors. So let me just explain a very simple idea, an example. Facebook is an obvious one. But Facebook, right, the signifiers of the brand, the typeface, Lucinda Grand, the color blue, the voice, all the things that signify the brand. But there's also this little button down here that gets pressed 4 billion times a day. And that little branded behavior is the thing that fuels the entire platform. Of course, infamously, that's what Facebook sells, after all, your likes. And so together, the signifier and behavioral system creates a connected identity. Another example, more recent one, Google. One of our clients, so they rebranded a number of years ago. Of course, you all know it. And it was interesting to talk about this and see some of the press around talking about the identity and whether it was more or less googly. But what was also really interesting was Google released a statement at the time saying the future of their interface would be spoken word. And so you introduced this whole new behavioral context. And what was really smart was they architected the brand, and the identity to respond. So you have this whole behavioral language. You know, it shows how it's listening, how it's speaking, thinking, and replying, and then back to the identity. So again, what is Google's active purpose, right? It's to connect the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And this is how their identity helps them achieve that. As visible interface disappears, the identity still has a role in helping them to connect information. Signifier, behavior, story, system, working together to make the brand connected. Okay, so let me show you a couple of examples. I'm going to show some things that you may not have seen, not some of drawing from the archives, but some interesting ones that explain this story system framework. So this was an interesting project, rebranding a sport through a connected experience. So this was the brief from the client. I want to rebrand boxing, the sport. And we're kind of, what are you talking about? And he had an interesting vision, this client. He said, I've got some of the best prize fighters on my roster, 150 of them. And I want to clean up boxing. I want to cut the crap out of boxing. It's lost its way. You know, it's become about the greed and the bling. I want to introduce the Olympic scoring system so that everyone knows who's winning after each round, because it's so confusing. And I want to take it out of Vegas, and I want to tell the fighter's story. And we thought, awesome. He also said he wanted to go back to the Muhammad Ali era and make the brands retro. And we're kind of like, no, we don't want to do that. Why would we do that? Let's take the sport forward. And he was also thinking about traditional broadcasting as a way to deliver this experience. And when we look at what people are really doing is that, you know, they're consuming other things, right? So there's the second screen, they're looking at social, they're looking at fantasy sports. So this behavioral context gives us an opportunity to create a new connected experience. So our pitch back to him was, let's make boxing the most connected sport in the world. Let's get as much technology in the ring as possible. It's this tiny little square, and let's make it basically a super connected experience and rebrand the sport from the bottom up through a connected experience. So that's what we did. So get boxing back to boxing was the active purpose. And we want to celebrate the fighter's story, but we also want to bring some of the art and class back, but also bring the science forward. Like, the science of fighting is incredible. It's a very cerebral sport, and it's about getting your opponent off balance, about thinking 5 shots ahead. It's like chess. You know, you wouldn't think that. So how do we actually help people understand that? So as we get into design, this is boxing today. It's a total mess. It's got an identity crisis. So you have Muhammad Ali. You've got like this thing down here, bottom right, was marketed as David versus Goliath. It's just cheesy. It's awful. And, you know, there's all kinds of things going on. So what we did was we turned these intent into a design idea. So let's clean up boxing. Let's produce the most beautifully clean identity we can and take the focus back to what matters most. Those 4 ropes. What happens behind those 4 ropes? And then we use those ropes to brand the fighters. You know, the laces of the shoes, etc., the second screen, which we'll talk about in a second. And it did what he wanted to do. It cleans up the sport without going backwards. Now we're really thinking about what's the systematic element. So we take that signifier and we make it behavioral. So it starts to move. It gives us an information layer to start to bring in a new data stream, and we built a connected app. And you can see those 4 lines run through the information architecture, and this is how it works. So we built a connected boxing glove, and it's connected to a range of sensors, and it's this connected app. So you can see the heart rate of the fighters, you can see the footwork in the ring, the pounds per square inch, where the punch landed, if it was a clean punch. So it gives you a totally new view of the sport.
It was a pot shot, it was a catch and shoot. It's just going to get your attention, but it's not going to.
And you can vote along as well, so the crowd can say who's winning. And of course, it gives us this new snackable data stream, so we can start to educate people, pour out bite-sized content. So that's the system. I've noticed that we started with the system first, not the story. So now what do we do with the story? So how do we tell a more bottom-up story? So instead of the brand speaking, what if the fighters speak? And if we really want to stand for something, maybe we should actually write a code. So we created what we call the Champions Code, and we wrote these with the fighters. So we interviewed the fighters, we photographed them. You know, we went and didn't fight them, but we went to where they fight. So we wrote 10, and we count down from 10. So I will make honor the most sought-after title, and they sign it. I will remember where I came from. This league has female boxers as well. 2, I will always get back up. This guy's so inspiring. He came out of retirement at age 45 to fight for a surgery for his 2-year-old daughter that he couldn't afford. And he got back in the ring, and he got beat into a pulp. He got knocked down in the first round, the second round, and then he got up and won in 12. 12 rounds, and that is boxing. Everyone's fighting for something. And so we celebrate the fighter's story. And of course, I will be a champion. But through this experience, we're redefining what it means to be a champion today. So story, system, and of course, you could pledge to the code, and it became social, and all those lovely kinds of things. I might walk over here. Okay, so another example. So this is a campaign. So stories and systems, how does that apply when you don't have a product? And how can you apply that to storytelling? So this is an interesting one. It started as an idea inside of Coca-Cola. It was a brilliant idea by Coke, Wendy Reed. They came up with this wonderful idea to show that they believe in diversity and they don't want to label people. They took off the label of the packaging and said, we don't believe in labels. And they wanted everybody else, every other brand in the world to follow suit and remove their labels. But the problem with that is no one has packaging like Coca-Cola. So, you know, if you're Campbell's soup, you take the wrapper off and it's just a can. So it wasn't very scalable as an idea. Back to the top-down, bottom-up, it's very top-down, right? It's a corporate initiative. So how could we turn this into a brand that's more bottom-up and actually start to create a bit of a movement around this? And most of the point, how do we actually get to the bottom and the heart of the issue? So why the hell do people label people? And so, you know, we did a lot of digging around this. And, you know, this is a mainstream issue now, but at the time it really wasn't. This idea of implicit biases. So we do, as human beings, 98% of our thinking in our subconscious mind. And that's where we collect and store what's called implicit biases. And we all have these, absolutely. Every one of us has these, and we don't see them. So this creates a bit of a problem, right? Because if we're going to create a campaign around labeling people, and we say, don't label people, everyone's going to agree, right? Because they don't see it. So how do we, there's just absolutely no point in doing a top-down campaign. What we have to do is do something that helps to reveal that bias within you, which was a challenge. So the problem with this, obviously these implicit biases affect every part of life, from daily interactions, job applications, to getting a loan, a fair trial, and an education. It's a huge, huge problem. So what we did was we gave them a very simple active purpose, which was to combat bias with love, and put out this idea of inclusion and flood culture with diverse images of love. So this was the kind of very simple strategic framework. Essentially, we created a brand to combat bias. So let me just show you. It's very simple. This was the logo. The idea is that it's not really a logo. It's the removal of a logo. And again, it has that kind of verbal construct built into it. Love has no labels. Love has no race. Love has no gender. No disability, no religion. So how do you launch this brand? This was a genius idea by two of the best at RGA, Chris Northam and Eric Yannon, who lead our marketing transformation business in New York. And they came up with this brilliant idea. I'm sure you've seen it, or maybe seen it. So it's literally a demonstration. It's an interface. It's a giant X-ray machine that literally removes the labels from people. So I'll just show you a quick video of how that worked.
Valentine's Day 2015. What started out as the regular annual celebration of love turned into something unexpected for Santa Monica shoppers. A large X-ray installation displayed skeletons embracing, those looking on mentally filling in the blanks. When the people stepped out from behind the screen, it created a simple demonstration of implicit bias and diversity.
And I can't change.
A video of the stunt was shared on YouTube and Facebook.
Finally, the video that likely landed in your Facebook feed today, the dancing skeletons, the magic, and the message.
A PSA about diversity doesn't just break the internet, it melts it.
Trending on YouTube and Facebook this morning, a wonderful video, and it's called Love Has No Labels.
Love Has No Labels s'article-là
a mené une expérience insolite aux États-Unis.
It's going crazy online. 40 million views in just 2 days.
At the same time, rival brands agreed to unite for the cause, all removing their own labels on Facebook and sharing the viral film. The whole campaign drove millions to a website where a test created by Harvard University and content further educated them about bias. A social photo tool also allowed people to share the love with the world. As the media continued to spread the word, so too did millions on Twitter, including celebrities like 50 Shades of Grey author E.L. James, football world champion Mario Götze, and the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama.
She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm.
So if we break down why this worked and why it's a little bit different, back to that stories and systems framework. So it's not top-down advertising, because these are real people. And you can tell, right? And they really love each other. And that's really powerful. It's true, it's real people. Also, it has that really strong verbal component that you'll notice. I think, the power of words is often, not enough, important enough in design, and love has no gender. It's just so simple. And of course, this thing was designed with a social mechanic in it. So you could just very simply upload your photograph and share it with the world. And of course, everybody loves someone. Everybody loves someone, so they wanted to share it. And it went around the world, no media spent. This was very, very efficient as a system. And this was about the time when marriage equality was being debated in this country. And so it really helped to contribute to that. They are just incredible results for it. So I'll show you one more recent one that we did last year. This was by another dynamic duo called Chris and Mike at RGA, brilliant art director, copywriter pair. And this was a brilliant idea. Essentially, we worked with the NFL. And so this is the idea. So we basically co-opted a very heterosexual behavior, which is the kiss cam. And again, I think what the cool thing about Love Has No Labels is, when you break it down, is the filming of people. Because what that moment does, it shows you the bias revealed. It shows the moment when they go, oh my God, and that's what's so powerful about it. So it's not just the stunts, it's the reactions that are so powerful. So here's a quick video of that.
I got a crick in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. But if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
So this was deliberately filmed in Orlando, of course, where the Pulse shooting was. And these are Pulse survivors. It's this kind of it's sport. It's this amphitheater of masculinity. And so I think that's also what made it powerful. And because it's sport, it gets that network effect, where it gets shared and shared and shared. Okay, one more example. So this isn't just about working with big brands. This is about small brands too, that it can be applicable, this connected brands approach. So ventures. So we launched our own ventures business 2014. And the idea here is really just to try and make things that people want and need. So if advertising about making people want things, we want to make things that people want. These are just as the kind of internet's moved off our screen and baked into the kind of everyday objects that surround us. These are just some of the things we did. This is an air purifier. This bottom right one here is a mini laboratory that can actually diagnose crop diseases in 20 minutes as opposed to 5 days, where it usually takes with old procedures. Let's talk about this one, top right here. So I'll just explain what this is. This is a breathing apparatus. And so I just want to show you how design can make a difference to these businesses. And so this is a new training tool. And their vision was it's for elite athletes training at altitude. It's an incredible tool. It's basically like weight training for your lungs. So it actually just increases dramatically your lung capacity and lung strength, therefore increasing athletic performance. And we thought this was a brilliant idea and a brilliant tool. And what we'll often do is I'll explain this a little bit more, but we'll look at kind of econometrics and try and find what's the best product market fit for this. And we actually found a much more valuable audience, which is children. So in America alone, 35 million children have asthma. And we know that tracking and training can reduce or completely eradicate the need for medication. But, of course, the problem is that things look like this. So, you really do not want to put that thing in your mouth if you're a kid. And so we actually spoke to the client about making this pivot, and they agreed that it's a bigger market and actually we can do more good. So let's actually refocus our business toward children, not elite athletes. And so once you have a different customer, right, a different user need, then you have to rethink everything. Virgilio, as an amazing designer at RGA, found this brilliant reference of a child's game. And then I think that we rethought everything, right? So back to that signifier and behavior. The first thing we thought about was creating this really simple behavior, which is a pufferfish. And so we turned this whole thing into a game. Of course, our pufferfish has friends. Here's some of his friends. And it just became a very simple tool where you blow into this apparatus to collect these tools and bubbles. And then breathe out again. It does all kinds of other things as well. Of course, kids love this. Absolutely love it. This was the logo. We designed the logo last. So what's the signifier? What's the name? The name, we called it alveo. So it's based on the alveolic hairs in your lungs that help you breathe. And the great thing about this name is it has the URL built into it. So it's alv.io. So very simple. And this has been now trialed at hospitals around the country. So a really interesting example of like what's great about putting designers with startups instead of VCs is that actually we can help them execute. You know, it's not like they don't have good ideas, it's that they can't execute those ideas as well. And what's our superpower? Helping people to execute, helping people to find an audience, helping to make things useful and valuable and interesting. Okay, so now I thought it might be your turn to have a go at something, naming. I was going to actually just explain, I'll give you a very simple brief. So this is literally one of our startups. So this is an old brief that came through our accelerator about a year ago. And they came to us and said, we figured out the future of same-day delivery. And this is what they were called, axle hire. So it's like literally an axle for hire. And when he started the company, they were a logistics company. So you call them up and you get a van and it'll drop your stuff off. But what they've actually managed to do is completely create this unique algorithm. And this is literally the client's brief to us. I hate my name, I hate my brand, please help me. It doesn't say anything about where we're going as a business or anything interesting about us as a culture, please help. And so just to break it down, what is it? So when we do an analysis, we look at what we call the 4 C's at RGA. It's very straightforward. First of all, we're going to look at the company. So what is interesting about us? What is our superpower? What's our backstory? What's our vision? What's our KPIs? What the hell do we want to do? What's our company? So the company here is a logistics solution built to master what's called the last mile same-day delivery. So in logistics, the last mile is the hardest part. To get something from a depot to another depot is relatively easy, but to get it from a depot to a door quickly is very expensive and time-consuming. And it's called the last mile. And they figured it out by creating this amazing algorithm that actually cuts the cost of same-day delivery by over 30%. That's a significant thing. It means it's faster, it's cheaper. And that means that small businesses can now do same-day delivery for the first time ever. So it opens up and unlocks lots of business opportunities for small businesses out there. So the customer, so usually we'll do a much deeper dive into what the drivers are for the customer and what our first best customer is. So this is the second C, company, customer. So I'm not going to go into it because we don't have time, but the customer really is small businesses, small business owners, caterers, fashion and designers, boutiques, those kinds of things. Also drivers. Of course, we need people to drive. And then generally people. So our client was very clear that he wanted this to be a consumer brand. Even if it's business to business, he wanted it to sound cool and be a brand that we could actually build equity in over time. The next C is category or sometimes competition. So you can see over here on the left, these reliable, but it's so slow, so big, and quite honestly not even interested in last mile delivery. Not interested, they don't need it. And then on the right here, so these do claim to be last mile, but don't do it particularly well, and the system really sucks. It's really badly designed. And so there's an opportunity here for a new player. And then finally, what's the cultural context? So the 4th C is culture. So in this case, we know we live in an on-demand world. Prime now, Amazon Prime really changed everything. You expect free delivery quickly. And so, this is the climate in which we're operating, is this on-demand culture. So the 4 C's. So this, cutting a lot of detail out, this was the story system framework we gave them. So powering how small businesses delivered. And they wanted to master the extra mile. So this is the storytelling. How do we master this mastery of the last mile? And then also, obviously, the power of the algorithm. But he didn't want it to be too techy, right? He didn't want it to sound like a machine, because they're real people. So it had this human touch to it as well. I'll recap all of this, don't worry. So what's often next for us is what's the feature set? And like a common problem, I'll show you in a second. So we always say brand is experience, right? You'll hear everyone say this. The great thing about having an active purpose is that can be a lens for features. And a problem that we often see is what we call featureitis. So like a client will come to us and say, we want this feature, this feature, this feature. And they've basically looked at the category and just put them all together. And they might put them into 4 buckets or something. But it just doesn't make any sense, especially for an MVP. So we'll often say, look, you're only as good as your worst feature. And so let us help you focus those features, and active purpose is a lens for that. This is some of the features that there's way more. So we just gave them 3 features, very simple. So first of all, 1 button, so simple. Tell us you're ready for pickup with 1 button. This is obviously the small business, right? So simple. Then track your delivery down to the minute and see your driver in real time. It's a beautiful interface, beautiful map. And then opt to have our delivery team set up for you right from the app. So this is almost a bit of the TaskRabbit type of service, right? The white glove, well, you know, this is a special delivery. We'll set it up, whatever it is. Okay, naming. So before you name it, let's show you how we do it. So as we said before, naming is really hard. It's one of the most underrated things in, I think, branding. And it's reasonably easy to generate a good name. But a good name you can own legally and linguistically, no chance. You know, it's so difficult. And naming is really important, obviously. It can be a real game changer for any business. And yet, surprisingly, bad names, terrible names are absolutely everywhere. So look at this on the left, Radio Shack. That perhaps wasn't the most future-focused name. You don't really want to buy radio, and you don't want to buy tech from a shack, most likely. Overstock, it's basically the shit no one else wanted. So, I mean, who wants to buy like the overstock? Trunk. Oh God. So this was Tribune online news content. Trunk. And this was just torn apart on social media. It sounds like a robot just died or something. This one is called Thrinder. So this is Tinder for threesomes. And so they got sued to oblivion. They're now out of business. And this is an interesting one. So Wix. So a bad name can be the butt of a linguistic joke or worse. So in Germany, Wix is also the word for male masturbation. And a German friend of mine was telling me that they actually leaned into this and went to market with "it's better when you do it yourself" as their strapline. I don't know if that's true. That's what I was told. So this is what naming shouldn't do. What should it do? So good names make a first impression. You know, you only get one chance to make a first impression. They set an expectation, right? So they set an expectation. What is this experience going to be like? What is this culture like? How much should I pay for it? You know, what will it do for me? All of that can come through in a name. Obviously differentiate from competitors, and really importantly, grow with your business over time. Also, back to our framework, I think a great name should really drive your story and inspire your system. So like our active purpose gives us a lens, well, maybe our name should give us a lens for our features and for how it comes to life. So, how do you get there? How do you name? Well, you absolutely do not do this, which is what people think they do. Get the thesaurus out. Let's just throw some names at a wall. Let's add a little ly on the end of everything. And like that is basically the modern equivalent of calling your brand Radio Shack. It's just going to date so quickly. It's such a tick of the time, so don't do this. What we often start with is what type of name do we need? So like names come in different flavors. And so on the left, they're very descriptive, right? So it says what it is. It's an axle for hire. Something that's more enhanced descriptive, like deliv, it says delivery, but it's a bit more ownable. Something like TaskRabbit, that suggests more of a benefit and a service. And then, of course, right on the far-hand side, the abstract name. And, of course, there are costs, pros and cons to all types of name. You know, descriptive, it's clear, it's smart, but you don't have any emotion in there. You have to work hard from a marketing point of view. The abstract name, much easier to own, but you have to build a lot of value in, and it's more of an empty vessel. So for this exercise, we focused on this middle area here. So don't make it too descriptive, don't make it too abstract. It's somewhere nice in the middle there, suggestive of a benefit or a service or an experience. Okay, so when we name, we generate thousands and thousands and thousands of names. For this one, we generate 3,000 names, and we had a 90% failure rate. So that means you send 100 to legal pre-screen, and you get 10 back. So you really have to generate lots and lots and lots of names to get to a name that's ownable. We usually present about 8 to 10 to a client. Now then, your turn. So I'll recap very quickly. But what I'd love you to do is just make friends with 3 people. There's a really good sense of camaraderie here. And just quickly, just generate 5 names together. Write it in your iPhone, have a chat. And then we'll do 2 minutes to choose a favorite. And then I'll run around and we'll present some of your names back to the room. So to recap, just finally, here's some considerations just to think through as you're naming. So what kind of name is right for the brands? What should the name convey? What kind of feeling? What kind of tone is right? How can you stand out? And how might the name connect to the system? All right, does that make sense? So, all right, there's the recap. Let's go. Talk to each other. Let's get naming. Okay, right, let's start presenting. I'm going to come to you guys first, so I think I had a nice idea. So just remind me what it was again.
Our idea was a Genie delivery.
Oh yeah, okay, that's lovely. So it's called Genie. And so you rub the app with a button and summon the experience, which is really nice. And you had another one as well, right? Which is what? D-Snap? D-Snap. So you get that sound when you click on the app. So you have that little bit of sonic branding in there, which is really nice. And then you had one, right, which was? Day livery. So obviously same day delivery, very simple. So you call that a coining, right? So very simple. And you had another one which was deliver ease. Deliver ease. So a very similar type of name, coinings. Anybody else have a name? Yes? Hyperdrive, lovely. Got good energy. Oh my God. Yes. Gimme. That's nice. Yeah, I like it. Hypermile. Did you guys had another one, right, as well? Was it bright and early or something? Was that? Sorry, that was yours. What was it? Bright and early. So that's nice, isn't it? It's like, so you call that phrasal name. So it's much more conversational, bright and early. And then, of course, you can, yes, shout. Inseer. It's here. Cool. Another phrasal name. Blink box. Cool.
It's one of those misspellings. It's delivery with an I at the end. So I for individuality and instant for...
Yeah, delivery with an I at the end. So, and then you use the I for instant and all that kind of stuff.
Click dart.
Click dart. Cool. Click dart, very precise. You're right.
I must add ship with a Y.
Ship.
Kind of like lift. That's sort of like forward.
Ship with a Y, which is like lift.
A to B.
A to B. That's cool. Yeah.
Algo.
What?
Algo.
Algo. So yeah, straightly. Hummingbird. That's lovely. Hummingbird. Right. So that's enough. Thank you. There's some good namers in the room. So yeah, well done, everybody. So I'm just going to show you what we did. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. So you've already done this. So, right. So what do we call it? So we called ours Jitsu. So this is the logo. I'll talk about that a little bit more. So one of the things we were trying to think about was, can we make this a verb? Someone else said that around here earlier. That was a good thought. And you said also it's about the human touch, which was cool. It is about the human touch, so that kind of like mastery. Obviously, this is a coining of jiu-jitsu, so it suggests a craft, a precision, an agility, a sharpness, jitsu, in between streets and things like that. And, you see this a lot in delivery, right? So can you FedEx it? Just Google it, Slack it to me. So this idea of a verb, so the cool thing about jitsu is it's built in, right? So don't just deliver it, don't just send it, jitsu it. Now back to that logo for a second. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a graphic gift hidden in that logo that we managed to find. So it takes the last mile, the shortest distance, from the dot from the J to the I to activate the behavior of jitsuing it. Jitsu it. Very simple, and it's a very simple swipe. So that's so efficient as a system because it has an inbuilt story. So as a small business, you can create it, you can pack it, you can send it in the same day, jitsu it. And, if you want it as a customer, I love it, I want it, I get it, jitsu it. And it's just so efficient, right? You can write these things, it can be completely relevant for the audience. And the really awesome thing is it has that behavior built in. So just swipe left to right, very simple. Like your idea of the genie and the snap, very similar. And then, of course, how that rolls out. So that was our idea. And what was really interesting was the client burst into tears when we presented this, in a good way. And we were like, oh, God, what have we done? And he loved this so much. He was overcome by joy that he burst into tears. I've never seen that before. And that's what's so awesome about working with small businesses, because it's their everything. And I think this is a good example of all the things we've talked about today, right? Story, system, signifier, behavior, verbal branding, visual branding, and experience design all coming together. So, seems a nice place to stop. Just to summarize some of the things we've seen today. So, by connecting the brand story and system together, you can create incredible network effects that were not possible before. Naming is really tough, and it's more than a label. It's an essential bridge between a brand story and a system. And to generate a name, you have to generate thousands and thousands and thousands of names. Build brands from the bottom up, because today behavior is as important as belief. Really important. Don't build top-down brands anymore. We've moved on. Build from the bottom up. Build with users first. Human-centered and humanity-centered. And I think hopefully I've demonstrated today what connected brands can do. They can transform businesses and move culture. They can change minds and challenge biases. They can improve lives in ways big and small, even change laws. And I think just to bring us right back to where we started, this moment we're in right now is incredible. I think what we do is really, really, really important and valuable. And we have a job to do, you know? We have a job to do to make sense of this world. I love this idea. I've felt it here at this conference that design is a movement, not just an industry. And one final thing is, we need you. We really need you. You guys have got such an important role to play. There are more problems than there are designers and creatives. So it's never been easier to contribute. It's never been more important to try. So let's get going. Let's get to work. And you can join us, Love Has No Labels, Mike Rigby, and RGA by Design. And please vote for my talk. You can see it there, that little wiggle. And you can win all kinds of prizes. But that's my talk. Thanks so much, guys. And thanks for listening.